Hello everyone and welcome to our Promoting Independence with Clicker webinar. I'm Katie and I'm a Senior Education Consultant here at Crick Software. Crick was founded in 1993 by John and Anne Crick, with John using his SEN teaching experience to design and build the first version of Clicker. Anne utilised her literacy and SEN skills to lead the curriculum content and design. Many years later, Clicker is a multiple BET award winner, as most recently this year won the award for Digital Learning Product Language and Literacy. And following on from the success of Clicker, a few years ago we also launched Docs Plus, our secondary product to continue supporting learners into secondary school and beyond. During this 30-minute webinar, we're going to be focusing on promoting independence with Clicker. What we'll be looking at is the key Clicker writing support tools and how these really enable children to decrease the amount of adult help they need with word selections, spellings, or perhaps simply just getting started with a piece of writing. We'll also be looking at a selection of useful Clicker resources that can support independence in both writing and reading. And finally, we'll have a think about how some of these resources can be used within the classroom. If you've got any questions as I'm guiding you through Clicker, my colleague Charlotte is in the Q&A box, ready to take any questions that you might have. You will also be receiving a recording of today's webinar, so don't worry about scribbling notes. You can sit back and watch along because you will also have the recording sent out to you in the next few days. We do also have on our website some useful training resources to perhaps use alongside this video that I'm just going to point you in the direction of. A lot of what we'll be covering this afternoon, you'll find in our Clicker Basics section. And all I've done here is gone to our website, www.cricksoft.com, and I've gone to the Training Resources tab along the top. So within the Clicker Basics section, here you'll find lots of the different small videos that are going to guide you through the key support features of Clicker. And as I've mentioned, this is what we'll be covering this afternoon. But if you want to watch it in a shorter, broken down, segmented video, we've got all of the different sections there for you. The other option would be our tutorials, which again, cover a lot of what we're looking at this afternoon, with a few additional areas such as matching sets, creating books and creating Clicker clothes, if you want to explore those in more depth following on from this basic introduction. Okay, let's move over to Clicker and start to think about how Clicker can be used to support writing independence within the classroom for a whole range of children who may be struggling with literacy challenges. The first thing to think about in terms of how Clicker works is that Clicker really has two main parts. It has a word processor element to it, which is really useful for children who are constructing simple sentences, perhaps need help with some vocabulary selection, perhaps need to listen back to their writing and check for meaning. Also really useful as children move through the school to give them a range of writing supports as they start to write more extended texts. The other side of Clicker is Clicker comes with a huge bank of ready-made writing supports that we call our Clicker sets. And you can see I've just opened one up on the screen here now that provides children with a range of alternative adjectives. So perhaps for some children who might struggle with vocabulary selection, default to a safe bank of words, this would give them some choice of more adventurous vocabulary. So Clicker sets can be really useful in supporting a genre of writing. in supporting a curriculum topic when we're writing, or for this example, just to give some general writing enhancement to some of the children who perhaps do struggle with vocabulary and spelling. And we'll have a look at where we can find lots of those ready-made grids later in the session. So I'm just going to hide that now because we're going to start in our writing document, and we're going to think about creating a piece of writing and the key writing supports that Clicker can offer to make sure that children aren't always relying on teacher help or other prompts and supports. And the prompts and supports that we're going to be using are along the top ribbon just here, and I'll refer to all of these 4 prompts as you see me create my piece of writing. So for our example today, well, I'm going to be retelling a fable, The Hare and the Tortoise. Some of you might be familiar with that, and we're going to see how, as a writer, Clicker will support me. So let me just add in my first sentence. So I've added in my first sentence. You can see it appearing on my screen. I'm going to add in my full stop.
Once there was a hare and tortoise.
So you can see and hear that Clicker's now read that back to me. So as a learner writing this piece of text, I can immediately spot that I've actually made an error within that sentence. So this support is really useful for children reading and tracking along, checking for meaning, listening out for any spelling errors. I noticed when I listened to that I've missed some key vocabulary out of there. My sentence doesn't really make sense. So what I can do now is I can go back, I can add in the missing words that I've forgotten, and I might now want to listen back to it to check again. So I'm going to put my cursor at the end of my sentence, and I'm going to use my sound button along the top ribbon.
Once there was a hare and a tortoise.
To listen back to that sentence. And I can see now, I can hear now that that sentence now makes sense to me. So already straight away within Clicker, I've been able to correct that independently with no prompts from a teaching assistant, a teacher, a support worker. Okay. Let's write our next sentence and think about another one of our key supports, which is going to be our spell checker. So let's add in our sentence.
The hare to say eat the tortoise for being slow.
So I can open my spell checker. Oh, sorry, I've actually done that wrong. I can open my spell checker by doing a right click on the word there, and you can see now that my word spell checking box has opened up. So useful if I couldn't read the word on sight. Some children might be able to find the right word in that box. Other children, again, to increase their own level of independence, might want to listen to the word. So if I want to listen to a word,
tested,
I can do a right click on that.
Teased.
And there's that speech support helping me again to discriminate between the correct answer. So that's one option for the spell checker. You can do a right click there, listen to the words, right click to listen. When I've found the right word, because I've listened to my options,
teased,
I can do a left click on the word, and it will then go into my writing document. Moving on, what I'm going to use this time is the word predictor. So we know that lots of children, perhaps write quite slowly, get stuck in the middle of a sentence, aren't too sure how to spell some of the words that they're trying to use. So if I was to begin my sentence, and perhaps I get stuck on the next word, which is going to be challenged. The tortoise challenged the hare to a race. I can open up my word predictor. So along the top ribbon, I've got a predictor icon just here, which this time now is starting to suggest some of the words that I might be trying to use based on the spelling pattern that I'm using, the words that I'm popping into my document. So if I was to add another letter in, you'll see that those words are changing and updating again. And if I was to add another letter in, I've got another selection of words. So this is useful for children who perhaps get stuck, perhaps give up on words, perhaps find it difficult to maintain engagement with writing over long periods of time. So the predictor works in the same way as the spell checker. So I can right click,
challenged,
to listen to the word, and again I can left click to choose it, and I can continue on through my piece of writing with the predictor helping me. And if I want to turn the predictor off because I know how to spell my next word, I can go to the cross icon and I can finish off my sentence. Again, if I want to return to my predictor because I'm going to get stuck with the word race, I can turn my predictor on, add in my letters, and again, I've got all of those options appearing on my screen for me. So useful, as I've mentioned, for children who perhaps struggle with longer words, building up phonetic sounds and then matching them to words selected in the box to enhance their writing. Finally, as we think about the document, we're going to have a look at the voice note recorder. Now, there's many different ways that we can use voice notes to promote learner independence. Perhaps some children in your classrooms you can think of who struggle to remember teacher instruction when they're on task, and they need reminding of what their activity is, what their sequential order of tasks is during that activity. So a voice note might be useful for a teacher to leave a learning prompt. And to activate the voice note, I'm going to go back to my support ribbon and use the microphone button. Press the red record button. Today, I'd like you to retell the story of the hare and the tortoise, and I want you to change one key detail in your writing. If I press stop and done, that voice note is now there in my page, ready for my learner to listen to. So a useful reminder of what I'm being asked to do if I've become distracted or move off task. So again, useful for engaging not only independence, but also reducing teacher instruction and perhaps the need for that one-to-one prompt and reminder, as we want clicker to become more of that supportive prompt rather than the teacher and the human intervention. Now, voice notes can also be useful from a learner perspective. Perhaps we've got children who forget their ideas as they start writing. Perhaps they can tell you a story verbally, they come to write it down and they forget what idea comes first, what comes next, some of the key vocabulary that they want to use. So a learner could also use the voice note tool. Again, pressing the red record button. The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow, so the tortoise challenged the hare to a race. I can press stop and done, and that's the next sentence that I can listen to and then add into writing on my page. And I can listen back to any of the voice notes simply by clicking on them. So if I want to remind myself of my teacher prompt, today I'd like you to retell the story of the hare and the tortoise, and I want you to change one key detail in your writing. Voice notes last up to a minute, and you can have 6 voice notes in a document. So it's useful for children recording, practicing what they want to write, listening back to those voice notes and using them as a sequential tool as well, because I could record my sentences in order and then translate them as I write them onto my page. So the 4 support tools, speech feedback, word predictor, spell checker and voice notes, are really useful in reducing teacher time with children, increasing independence and engagement. And just recently we've had a success story from St Catherine's Academy who's mentioned their use of Clicker within their school. I'll point it out on the website at the end if you'd like to read it in more detail. But they mentioned that children very quickly learn how to use those 4 key supports in their writing and move quite rapidly to greater levels of independence, which not only means that children can work more independently, but also frees up a large amount of teacher time that might have been spent with one-to-one or intervention groups within the classroom. Okay, keeping with our topic of our fable, we're going to think about children who perhaps would need a little bit more scaffolded writing support to successfully create a piece of writing. And this is where we can head into learning grids to find some of our ready-made clicker sets. To access learning grids, you'll find a folder in the top left-hand corner, which will then take you through to a tab that's called Learning Grids Resources. This is our bank of online cross-curricular resources linked to all of the different curriculum subjects, which means that children can not only use Clicker when they're writing about geography, history, science, it can be used in every single lesson to provide scaffold and support. And heading into one of my tabs, I can then find my different categories, topics and themes within that cross-curricular subject area. Now, because we've been looking at the hare and the tortoise, I'm going to go into our story corner, where we're going to find a selection of traditional stories, fables, myths and legends. And I'm going to head over to the tortoise and the hare resources. And what I'm going to begin to show you is what we call a sentence set. You can see on the right-hand side that our resources have names. So we've got a clicker board, a clicker book. I'm going to open for you to begin with our sentence set. So a sentence set is really useful for children who perhaps struggle to construct simple sentences, maybe children who struggle with spelling, perhaps children who struggle with reading aloud some of the words to then use them within their writing task. You can see that what this sentence set is providing is a picture relating to our story and some words that I need to arrange in sentence order to retell my story of the tortoise and the hare. Within my sentence set, there's lots of different supports available to me. So we can right-click on a word
being
if we want to listen to it before we choose it. If we want to have an additional level of support, we've also got a model above our picture just here. And what the model does is it provides to me what the sentence that I'm trying to write. Now, I've got my model open. I can't copy that at this time. So this is a useful way for children to read or listen, remember, and then go back to construct the sentence by tapping on the words. And if they need to go back to the model at any point during their sentence, they can do that. When they get to the end of the sentence and add in the full stop.
The hare made fun of the tortoise for being slow.
We're going to have that speech feedback, reading aloud the sentence, again encouraging children to check that that makes sense. Once they've completed their first sentence, they can follow the arrow button through to the next sentence and the next sentence. So it's guiding them through that piece of writing with full speech support to enable them to read any of those words that they might find difficult. Following on from the sentence set, some of my children might want to access a connect set. So what the connect set does here, you can see, is it still provides all of the vocabulary that I need to produce my sentence, to retell my fable, but it's also starting to introduce options of different word choices. It's clustering words together so children can work with a wider working vocabulary. I've got connectors so that I can extend beyond the simple sentence. And I've also got a choice of punctuation. So connect steps still give me all of the support that I need to create my sentence, but with a greater element of learner choice. And it might be that using a connect set, children can produce more extended text or multiple sentences from the same grid before they move on to the next tab and the next tab. So sentence sets and connect sets are really designed to support children at the early stages of sentence construction, moving towards more independent writing with the idea of a connect set, broadening out those options. Finally, perhaps I might want some of my children to create their own fable. We've read The Hare and the Tortoise, and what they're going to do now is create their own story within that genre. So for this, I might want to use one of our writing frames. So you can see what the writing frame has done is on the tabs along the top, it's giving me different vocabulary that's going to be useful in this genre of writing. So to begin with, I've got my sentence starters. So clusters of vocabulary, sentence openers, whereby we're lessening the working load, the spelling challenge that children are encountering because we've got those chunks of writing to begin with. We've got our different characters that we might want to include in our story. We've got some general linking words and phrases, and we've got some words on the end that will be useful to our genre of writing a fable. So children using a word bank, a writing frame to produce their piece of writing would be able to use some of their high frequency words, because you'll notice that I haven't got many of those within my writing frame. So I would be able to add in my own high frequency words. I might also at the same time perhaps want to use my predictor to help me with some of those words as well. And then I could move through the tabs, again, listening to the words.
Lion.
To build up my own story.
Fox.
Around the genre of fable writing. So it's really giving those children some of the targeted spelling and vocabulary linked to that genre, as well as utilising their own capabilities to independently spell some of their high frequency words. Again, referring back to and using any of those key clicker support prompts to enable that writing process. Now, we're not going to spend too much time on this today, but I will say that any of the ready-made writing grids, you can also edit. So if you would like to make any changes to any of the clicker grids that you find within Learning Grids, you can do that simply by going to the Edit option in the bottom corner. And what you'll then see is our clicker grids on the left-hand side, where you can now make changes to the vocabulary that children are working with. So I might decide that on my characters tab, I want to take out some of the words there, and I want to add in some of my own vocabulary that perhaps children have been working with within the lesson to represent what they're then going to put within their stories. So all of the ready-made grids, fully editable for you. So we've had a look at the writing process and how Clicker can provide lots of support to encourage independence and increase engagement. Let's spend a couple of minutes just thinking about the reading process and how we can support children with that. So as I go back into Learning Grids and I keep my tortoise and my hare topic, I'm going to open for you one of our Clicker books. Really useful for children who perhaps struggle with reading independently, perhaps would need somebody to read text to them, perhaps need to over-consolidate and practice vocabulary before they move on to a writing task. So here's our reader book. You can see I've got my title and my illustrations, my sound button in the bottom corner. So I can press my sound button.
The tortoise and the hare.
And as it reads it aloud, it's going to highlight it for me. I can move through the pages in my storybook. If I want all of the text read aloud, I can press my speaker button. If I just want an individual word occasionally read to me, I can click on the word.
Time. Tortoise.
So different levels of support there, depending on the stage of reading that the learners are at. Also useful to point out that the pictures and the language that children meet within a clicker book is then mirrored in what they meet in the writing grids of the sentence set, the connect set and the word bank. So it's a really nice transition in terms of independence if you've got children that can encounter the clicker book and read along with that and then move into the writing task and use exactly the same language that they've just read within the storybook. Finally, we're going to look at clicker close. So clicker close is a useful way of providing a fill the blanks activity linked to reading comprehension and to the text that we've just been reading. So again, really simple to create these yourself. There is a video in the tutorials section that will guide you through this. What we've got here is a piece of text that I've added in, the tortoise and the hare again, some words on the left-hand side, which are going to be used to fill the gaps. And again, 2 levels of support here to increase learner independence. First of all, I can left click on the words in the word list.
Past.
To listen to them. I can also have the text within my clicker close read aloud to me. So if I want to listen to my sentence,
Once.
I can put my cursor anywhere into my sentence.
There.
I can press my speaker button along the top and clicker will read aloud the text that children may perhaps struggle with independently or need a teacher prompt. And when they get to the blank that they want to fill in, they can use the words on the left-hand side of the page, or alternatively, perhaps they might want to add in their own word alternative. So using the word bank on the left-hand side, typing in words that they think might be appropriate. And again, you can see the way that Clicker can support there with that speech feedback being really useful to enable those reading and comprehension tasks, such as a Clicker close. Okay, we've almost got to the end of our session. I'm going to finish off by moving back over to the website and pointing out just a couple more useful things in terms of moving forward with Clicker. So we do, of course, have a number of live webinars, such as this one. The next one coming up will be Writing Stories with Clicker. Sign up to that on the 25th of May. And as I mentioned, just as we quickly finished with Clicker Close, an upcoming training session on that. So if you'd like to spend 30 minutes learning how to create Clicker Close and the potential of how those can be used in the classroom, do sign up to those live webinars. Don't forget to have a look back over the basics and the tutorials videos if you think they're going to be useful to enhance and further your understanding of Clicker. We're of course here to help if you've got any questions. You can book a short 15-minute customer care meeting with any of the education team where you can ask any Clicker questions and we'll be happy to help to make sure that you're really maximising the use of Clicker across your school. And just finally, I did mention the success story from St Catherine's Academy, We've got a whole bank of these. This one from a Year 5 teacher, really looking at how they've used Clicker across the school and the transformative effect that that's had on pupils' attitudes to learning and writing outcomes. So if you've got 5 minutes and you would like to hear how other schools are using Clicker, do head over to some of those success stories. If you want to contact us directly from the webinar, I'm going to pop my colleague Gemma's details on the screen for you just now. Gemma leads our customer care team. She'll be happy to help with any immediate questions that you might have. And as we come to the end of the webinar, it just leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us. We are going to open up a quick survey at the end of the webinar, so do please give us any feedback, any thoughts by filling in that survey. So thank you for your time, everybody. I hope it's been a useful introduction to how Clicker can promote writing independence. So thank you and goodbye.